Uh, from time to time, we go to a conference in Nashville. It's called the Sing Conference. It's put on by the Getty family. I don't know if you're familiar with them. They put out some great, biblically sound, strong music, and we sing many of their songs here. And they have a group called Shane and Shane. Some of you know Shane and Shane. They come and sing from time to time there. And they have concerts they're spread out through the day. And they had a concert for Shane and Shane that started at 10 p.m. That's like 2 hours past my bedtime, you know. It started at 10 p.m. And, you know, there's so many different things that are encouragement to someone who leads worship. So many things that are encouragement. We'll hear a song and think, oh, that song moved me, and so I've got to teach it to the congregation. Things like that. You learn various things. But sometimes there are those things that are a comfort and help to a worship pastor that just cannot be planned for, but they come across anyways. We were at the Shane and Shane concert at 10 p.m. And they did this wonderful first song. It was big and bombastic. It was just wonderful, you know. And Shane Wright, you know who I'm talking about? There are two Shanes. The guy who's always on the right. He started strumming his guitar, and as he's strumming his guitar, he's taking a moment, he steps back, he's kind of collecting himself. He's having this moment, you know, and I thought, man, I think this guy's going to cry. And he plays it a little bit, he steps back again, and he comes back to the microphone, and he stops, he says, I'm sorry, I know I wrote this song, but I can't remember how it goes. And I sat there, and it was worth the whole conference. It was worth the whole conference to know that it just doesn't happen to me, okay? Take your Bibles and turn to Psalm 121. We'll start here in a second. In 1970, I was 10 years old, and I fell in love with baseball in 1969. In 1969, my grandfather took me to a Chicago Cubs game. I walked into that old rickety ballpark, and there was just something about the team was out there warming up. We were walking down to our seats, and the freshly cut grass, you could smell that. You could smell the popcorn and the hot dogs they were selling in the background. I mean, it was just an experience of sights and sounds and smells, and I fell in love with Chicago Cubs baseball. But at that time, I was learning that there was not only a Chicago Cubs team, but there was a team that was across town, and that they were kind of upset that a guy left Chicago, working in the background in Chicago, and left to go run the ball team across town for the Chicago White Sox. His name is Bill Veeck. Bill Veeck was a weird bird. As a matter of fact, he's so weird. His goal was to try to bring as many people to the ballpark as possible. And in the process, he did some very strange things. Some of those strange things, we see them happening even now in baseball, okay? Bill Veeck brought in brand new, modern ball uniforms. One of the ball uniforms looked like a casual suit from the 1970s. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? Do you remember that? Okay. Bill Veeck was the one who started this thing of having events at baseball games, Pet Day. That was started by Bill Veeck, okay? The giveaways, many of those were started by Bill Veeck. He had... As a matter of fact, as a young man, this is the connection with the Chicago Cubs. As a young man, 23-year-old man, it was Bill Veeck that said, why don't we plant ivy in front of the field at Wrigley Field when he was working there for the Cubs? And so the ivy, which is a iconic feature of Wrigley Field, is there because of Bill Veeck. So Bill Veeck had they called it the exploding scoreboard. He was the first one in all of Major League Baseball to have fireworks that shot out of the scoreboard after they won a game. Bill Veeck. Okay, well, Bill Veeck had this idea of having someone come in and be the organist that was more interactive with the crowd and with the baseball game as a whole. So he fired the guy that he had, and he brought in a lady whose name was Nancy Faust. Nancy Faust was a wonderful organist. She had a certain talent about playing the organ that she could take a modern day song, which would not be identified when someone played it on an organ, and she could make it where it worked. It worked. So she would listen to, and another thing, they brought in a guy, you might have heard of him. He was an unknown at the time. Well, I guess he was relatively, oh, there she is. Sure. Okay, that's not Harry Carey, but that's Nancy, okay? And so Harry Carey was the announcer. He's a very colorful personality. And so she would listen to Harry Carey, and if Harry Carey said something that reminded her of a song, she would be able to jump right in, play by ear, jump right into that song and play it, and it became very entertaining. People would come to the ball game and listen to the ball game on the radio, and so that they can hear the organ playing. So it was a kind of a cool dynamic. She's a very talented lady, and so she would listen and play these songs, and then she would do a little bit of research about the ball players and found out that they were from, let's say they were from whatever their hometown would be, and she would play a song that maybe spoke about their hometown or maybe their home state, and it became a thing. Well, then later on, ball players would go to her and say, hey, when I go to bat, would you play this song as I walk up to bat? And then we saw the birth of the walk-up song, okay? Now it's all the time. A ball player has a particular song that he likes, and as he walks to the home team, walks to go to the batter's box, that song will play. Now, how many of you know what a walk-up song is, okay? Okay. Today, we're going to learn about the Jewish walk-up song, okay? All right. Psalm 121. Psalm 121. Let's read that verse 1 and 2. I will lift up mine eyes unto the hills, from whence cometh my help. My help cometh from the Lord, which made heaven and earth. The Word of God is a remarkable book. The book of Psalms is a remarkable book as well. It is a song book. It is a song book made up of songs that were used by the children of Israel for various things. This is no exception. As a matter of fact, Psalm 120 through Psalm 136, I believe it is, these are songs of ascension. Psalms of ascension. The Jews were commanded to go to Jerusalem 3 times a year. Now, you can go to Jerusalem anytime you want, but you were required to go there, especially the men were required to be there, and there were 3 times. It was the Feast of Pentecost, what are they? Feast of Tabernacles. What was the third one, Ed? What? The Passover. Yeah, the Passover. Kind of an important one, okay? All right. So those 3 events it was required them to go. And so the journey to Jerusalem was quite the event. It was a family event. Families would gather together and they would travel together. They would travel together for many reasons. One of the reasons was it was a great time of fellowship, and as they would travel. Also, it was a thing of safety. There's safety in numbers, right? They knew that back then too, and so they would travel together for that purpose. And so it was quite an event for them to go as a family. It was kind of a fun thing. Some people, it took them a number of days to get to Jerusalem, so they would go and travel and camp out. The kids would get out and play. Some of you go camping. Any of you go camping in here? Raise your hand if you go camping, okay? I'm sorry. You people are weird. I'm sorry. Why you would go and pay all that money to buy a camper and stuff to go and stay outside. I just don't. But you're good for you, okay? To my wife, camping is a Holiday Inn. That's it. But they would go, and it was a great time. They would sit around the fire. It was a wonderful time for the family to get together, and so they would travel up. They would travel up to Jerusalem. Now, the reason they would say up to Jerusalem is not because Jerusalem was in the north. You would all understand that that would not be the case, right? Okay. It was because of the elevation of Jerusalem. Jerusalem was a higher elevation than most of those areas. And so they were always traveling up. But not only was it a higher elevation, but there was a certain air and respect that they had for Jerusalem, that Jerusalem was always considered to be high and holy. It was a holy place for them to go. So they would sing these songs as they were ascending or walking up the hills or the mountains to get to Jerusalem. And everybody knew this song, and they would sing together. And I don't know if there were harmonies that they would pick up. I would like to think that there was. I don't know if there was someone who had a tambourine that would play as they would travel on. I'm not sure. But they would sing this song as they would travel up the side of the mountain to go to Jerusalem. And so it was a big event. Now, as we think about this song that would be sung, these songs that would be sung as they would travel on to Jerusalem, you might think of or recall a story about them traveling to Jerusalem and singing these songs, perhaps in the New Testament. Is there one that comes to mind? Yeah. When Jesus was traveling with his family and they went up to Jerusalem, and when they were in Jerusalem, they finished their business there and they began to head on back, and they forgot something, or should I say someone, a very important someone, right? They forgot Jesus. Now, have you ever read that story and wondered how in the world does a parent lose the Messiah? I mean, really, how in the world does that happen? Well, I know that I have, but you have to understand that they were traveling in groups. I won't ask for a show of hands, but I will ask the question, have you ever forgotten your child somewhere? Okay, yeah. Sometimes it's on purpose. Right? No, but have you ever forgotten your child somewhere? Okay. And right now there might be a funny, maybe a not so funny story, or maybe, how about this, guys? Guys, you think it's funny, but your wife doesn't think it's funny. Okay. Story that goes along with you forgetting or leaving your child behind. And one of the most common reasons that a child is left behind is because of miscommunication. You thought your spouse had the child and they thought you had the child. And so you took off and you went home, and you got home and said, where's the child? And you thought, oh no. And the same thing happened to Joseph and Mary. So that's what took place. And in that story, within that story, there's a very important part of this psalm. And we see the sacredness of the time there in Jerusalem. And we also see what going to Jerusalem and being in the house of God meant to our Savior. Do you recall the words when they finally found Jesus and Mary and Joseph found Jesus? Look at Luke chapter 2. I know we're going to get to Psalm 121. If you want, you can look on the board. I think it's going to be up there. Luke 2:46. And it came to pass that after 3 days that they found him in the temple, sitting in the midst of the doctors, both hearing them and asking them questions. And all that heard him were astonished at his understanding and answers. Isn't that remarkable? It really is a wonderful passage of Scripture. Verse 48. And when they saw him, they were amazed. And his mother said unto him, Son, why hast thou thus dealt with us? Behold thy father, and I have sought him sorrowing. So Joseph is upset about the whole thing. And he said unto them, how is it that ye sought me? And if I may add to that, basically what he's saying, why are you seeking me? Where would you expect me to be? So if you were at Walmart, and you lost your child at Walmart, where would you go? What department would you go to probably find your child? Toys, right? Okay, how about ladies, if you lost your spouse at Walmart, where would you go to find your spouse? Toys. I knew I could count on you, Landon, okay? Maybe automotive, what? Groceries, okay, all right. Huh? Electronics. Okay, maybe the ball game's on. What? Ice cream aisle, okay, all right, good, all right. It's a confession too, okay? What? Automotive? Oh, in the car waiting for you, okay. Great answer right there, great answer, okay? Now, you said that because that's what you would expect, right? So they had the Messiah with them. And if Jesus was lost, the first place to go to find out if he's there is the place that you expect. That's what Jesus is saying here. Where else would you expect me to be? If I'm lost, where do you think I would be? And he goes on to say, why hast he said, wish ye not that I must be about my Father's business. So he was there in the temple reading, and he was right where you would expect him to be, and he was right where he wanted to be. And oh, that we as children of God loved coming to church as much as Jesus loved going to the temple. We all of us ought to love coming to the house of God. I've said this before. Your children should never have to come and ask you, Mom and Dad, are we going to church today? That ought to be an understood thing. That ought to be an expectation. I mean, your kids on Saturday night should be getting their things ready to go without you saying one word. Why? Because we're going to church. My grandfather used to say this. He said, if the church doors are opening, you ought to be there to find out what they're creaking about. And that's what we live by. When I was 14 years old on, we were there. And so we see there's a love for the house of the Lord. There is an anticipation to be there. So Psalm 121, it says the prelude there is a song of degrees, okay? Or that's if you have a King James. If you have another version, it might say a song of ascent. These are songs that were sung as they were traveling along. It says, first of all, I will lift up mine eyes unto the hills, from whence cometh my help. My help comes from the Lord, which made heaven and earth. So imagine now, he said, I lift up my eyes unto the hills, from whence cometh my help. Now remember, they're traveling to Jerusalem. And as they're traveling to Jerusalem, what do you think the hills would be as they're traveling to Jerusalem? The hills were probably the hills that led up to Jerusalem. And so he says, I lift up my eyes unto the hills. There in those hills from whence cometh my help. So I'm going to Jerusalem. Why is he saying it's from where comes my help? It was the place where the Lord would reside, if you will. But notice the theology here. From whence comes my help? So I look up on the hill from where my help comes from. He is saying this. Though this is G. Campbell Morgan. He said this: though the singer is far from Jerusalem, his God is near him now. So I think that's very important for us to understand, because for two reasons. One is we all need to know that the Lord is with us now, even though on your journey, sometimes you think he's far away. So our first point, for those who take notes, is he will be with you. He will be with you. So God is just as present in the journey as he is in the destination. They're going to Jerusalem. They're going to be in a very holy and sacred place for a Jew. And the psalmist is saying, even though we're traveling to get there, the Lord is still with me now. Oh, how important that is. Because sometimes we dread the destination, we dread the journey, only longing to get to the destination. But in reality, the Lord is with us on the journey. And if you'll allow him, the Lord can make your journey much better than that you can possibly imagine. So he is, our help does not come from the destination. No, our help comes from the God of the journey. So here's the first question. What does your journey look like right now? Does it look rocky? Does it look unstable? Is there anxiety involved in your journey? Is it long? Is it treacherous? Is it a journey that you never expected? You thought that you would never have to go through something that you're going through right now. And to you, your journey is dark and gloomy. But can I encourage you to do this? Would you lift up your head? Would you lift up your eyes? And would you see the hills, there in the hills, from whence cometh your help? He is with you. Number two is this: he will establish you. Look at verse number 3. He will not suffer thy foot to be moved, and he that keepeth thee will not slumber. Now, I want to point out the first part of that verse very carefully. He will not suffer thy foot to be moved. In other words, he says God will make you to stand firmly in the time of your journey. Paul talked an awful lot about taking a stand and being steady and being firm. Probably the most iconic place is in Ephesians chapter 6 and verse 11. You know that, don't you? Put ye on the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against rulers of darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Wherefore take unto you the whole armor of God. Why? Why do we need the whole armor of God? That ye may be able to withstand in the evil day. And having done all, what? Stand. So Paul talked an awful lot about taking a stand for him. The word tells us all throughout and Paul talks about all throughout the New Testament. For instance, he tells us that we should stand in grace, according to Romans chapter 5, verse 2. We're to stand in the gospel, according to 1 Corinthians chapter 15. We're to stand in courage and strength, according to 1 Corinthians chapter 16. We're to stand in faith, according to 2 Corinthians chapter 1. We're to stand in Christian liberty in Galatians 5, and we're to stand in Christian unity in Philippians chapter 1 and 27. And we're to stand in the Lord according to Philippians chapter 4. So it's important that we as God's people are on a firm foundation and that we stand. Now, how do we stand? We trust in him who will not allow our foot to be moved. Psalm 121 verse 4. Behold, he that keepeth Israel shall neither slumber nor sleep. I read a story about a woman this week, a woman who had lost, a poor woman who lost all of her goods. And she went to the king and found an audience with the king. And she said, "Oh, king, could you please help me? Everything that I had, everything that I owned was stolen." And he said, "Fine lady, tell me, how could you possibly let somebody steal all of your goods? What happened? What were you doing?" She said, "I was sleeping." "Well, how could you sleep during a time when your goods might be stolen?" And she said, "I was sleeping because I thought you were awake and watching." The king was so moved by that he restored to her everything that she had owned and replaced everything she had owned and gave her far more than she had lost. And that's what we have. That's how we have confidence in the Lord. We can sleep at night because we know He is not sleeping. You say, "Well, hold on, Brother Dave. Hold on just a second here. Didn't Jesus fall asleep in the boat?" We're going to get to that in a little bit, okay? We'll get to that in a little bit. We should trust in the one who will never sleep. Number 3 is He will protect you. He will protect you. Verse 5, "For the Lord is thy keeper. The Lord is thy shade." Now, you know what? I'm so glad that God is a keeper. He keeps us. My wife is a keeper. I think she's got cards and letters from the kids from all the way back. I mean, she's a keeper. And by the way, she is a keeper, okay? But she keeps things. But God is the one who keeps us. That ought to be a comfort to you. We're saved by grace. We're saved by grace. And there's nothing that we can do to keep our salvation because there was nothing that we could do to gain our salvation. And aren't you glad He is a keeper? The Lord is thy keeper, and the Lord is thy shade upon thy right hand. The sun shall not smite thee by day, nor the moon by night. This is kind of a recollection of the children of Israel traveling through the wilderness. And as they would travel through the wilderness, there was a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. And it could be said to those people who traveled while the Lord's presence was there, it could be said of them, "The Lord is thy shade upon thy right hand, and the sun shall not smite thee by day, nor the moon by night." So this is also a reminder of Psalm 91. "He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the what? The shadow of the Almighty." So God's presence is with us in the darkest times, in the brightest times, in the heat of the hour. He is with us, and He's there to protect us and to comfort us. Number 4 is this: He will preserve you. He'll preserve you. As a matter of fact, as we look at verse number 7 and 8, we're going to see that this word preserve is repeated over and over again. "The Lord shall preserve thee from all evil." Let's pause for a second and stop and think about this. Does this mean that you as a Christian will never have sorrows, that you'll never have problems? Is that what it means? If you listen sometimes to that TV evangelist, they'll tell you that, but that's not what it's being taught there. It's not saying that everything will always be sugar plums and butterflies and unicorns. Okay? That's not what it's saying here. It's saying when evil does come, He'll be there to protect you and to preserve you. When hardship does come, He will be there in that hour of hardship. In your sorrow and in the midst of your grief, He will be there as you go through this time of grief. So we say, but wait a minute, Brother Dave, Jesus wept. Jesus slept. How am I supposed to trust this one who weeps just like I weep, who sleeps just like I sleep? Well, we know that the Lord, when He came to this earth, He laid aside certain things that allowed him to suffer through this life like we suffer through. He got tired like we get tired. He got hungry like we get hungry. But if you recall the story in Mark chapter 4, where Jesus fell asleep in the boat, they were sitting there rowing and rowing, trying to get through this storm. And finally, they recognized the fact here the Lord is sleeping on the boat. So let's wake him up. Look at verse 37. And there arose a great storm of wind, and the waves beat into the ship so that it was now full. And he was in the hinder part of the ship, asleep on a pillow. And they awaken him and say unto him, Master, carest thou not that we perish? So their assumption is that the Lord is going to go ahead and allow that he's going to sleep through this storm and allow them to be shipwrecked and for them to die in this storm while Jesus sleeps. It's a bit crazy, isn't it? And Jesus arose, and he rebuked the wind and said unto the sea, Peace, be still. And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. And he said unto them, Why are ye so fearful? Now, I think there are a lot of times when we see the disciples not live up to our expectations that we would kind of blame them in a story. This is not one of those times. Because I would have been just as fearful as they would have been. And I probably would have asked the same questions that they had. Why are you so fearful? How is it that ye have no faith? And they feared exceedingly and said one to another, What manner of man is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him? Well, what a wonderful story. So the question is, what about this Jesus who fell asleep in the midst of your storm? I think we could still find comfort that he's able to take a nap. And when we wake him, guess what? He's going to calm the storm for us. So lift up your eyes into the hills, from whence cometh my help. My help comes from the Lord, which made the heaven and earth. He'll not suffer you to experience evil. He that keepeth thee will not slumber. God is with you. So here are the points real quick. Number 1 is he will be with you. Number 2, he will establish you. Number 3, he will protect you. And number 4, he will preserve you.